Hello and welcome to a special Sunday morning Scotland Rugby News podcast with me, your host, Bruce Aitchison from Happiness Egg Shaped, and him, Mr. Extraordinaire Editor, Gavin Harper. And are we going to call this Sunday Morning Coffee with Bruce and Gav? Look, I've rolled out the Sports Direct mug for this one. Oh,
excellent.
Maybe we shouldn't be advertising that.
That's okay. That'll keep me going. Still the BBC. That'll keep me going for the duration of this. And I have a horrible feeling, Bruce, you might need it.
Yeah, well, you called this meeting into session. I got a message from Gav last night. Can we do a pod tomorrow? And I thought that's not great. That's not great. If we need an emergency pod, we need a Sunday morning pod. So I put the kettle on. Sports Direct. The house is empty. The dog is walked. I am yours, big man. I am yours. And I had the pleasure of watching the second half of the Edinburgh game yesterday.
And after watching the first half, I was ready to go and lie in a darkened room for the rest of the afternoon. Where at the start, I mean, it was just dreadful. Like, I mean, about 20 minutes in, I thought this could quite easily be Edinburgh's Danny Wilson Leinster game, and it just got worse and worse and worse until clearly there was a message at half time. And yeah, look, the second half was complete damage limitation by that stage, but it was just like to perform at that level and as a professional team is just miles off it. I reported John Barclay's comments on Premier Sports yesterday, and he's 100% right. There'll be some serious questions after that, because to ship 48 points and a half in a team that's absolutely laden full of international caps is just miles away from where Edinburgh should be and want to be. So I think I was saying just before we came on air, I mean, the idea of the Stormers at the Hive next weekend is frightening, because I didn't think Edinburgh were capable of a performance like that.
Yeah, listen, we've all been there, I think, or most of us have been there, where we've had a run and we've taken some hidings. Nobody's hurting more than the players and the coaching team and Sean Everett, who has to front up. The challenge is you can try harder, but sometimes trying harder doesn't work.
Yeah, you're right. I think, though, Edinburgh looked in the second half. Edinburgh did things that you would consider like non-negotiable basics. Their kick chase was decent. They filled gaps in the defensive line. They did none of that in the first half. And the worrying part for me was Sean Everett said after the game the players didn't stick to the plan. He then backtracked on that and said the players didn't execute the plan. Now, whichever it is, that's 2 weeks in a row that we've had a representative of Edinburgh Rugby saying our players have gone off script in some capacity from the pre-game idea. And I think one of the things he said was, the part of the plan in Johannesburg was to kick the ball off the field and obviously not give the Lions broken field counter-attack. If Edinburgh did that once, they did it 3 times in the first half, that led directly to tries. And it's that was the worry and the frustration from me watching it here, was that they were doing the same thing over and over again. And the Lions, I mean, look, the Lions at home are a great side to watch. And they just ripped Edinburgh apart from their own 22, from Edinburgh's 22. It looked like every time they attacked, they could score, and invariably in that first half they did. And I think John Barclay said after the game, what can you take from that Edinburgh second half? And he said nothing. And I think that's right, because it was, the game was so far gone, and the Lions had clearly dropped a level or two. If they had come out with the same intensity, I think they would have run in another few scores. It could have got really, really ugly for Edinburgh, and they could have been staring down the barrel of a 50, 60 point, a 60 or 70 point defeat. I mean, this has to be the line in the sand now for Edinburgh. If Sean Everett's going to turn this round, it goes without saying, but this can't, something like this can't happen again.
Yeah, I hear you. It's there's so much about this. They're in South Africa. They went with the hope that they were going to be able to gel a bit more, because pre-season at professional rugby, when a lot of your players are Scottish Rugby employed and have been on a tour and are not necessarily back at the same time, so there was the hope that spending time together was going to be useful. I'm still not a huge believer in you learn more when you lose. I think you just analyse more when you lose, and it's part of the have to be seen to hurt. Last week, Gilco was pretty honest. Gilco had a bit of a crack about what needs to happen. He must be hurting this morning, because it feels like that didn't really get the reaction. I cannot imagine what that changing room was like after the game. I do wonder if the door was locked and there was some chat. They had some time together last night. They're flying today. That's a long old flight off the back of the last 3 games. And we spoke about this pre-season. We spoke about this after game 1. The chance to come back for South Africa with a certain number of points would be a positive. The objective view of this is, they've not done that. They've not met the objective, but they've got a chance on Saturday to try and get back on the horse, especially in front of their own supporters. It'd be great to think there was going to be a full hive to try and lift it, but I think from reading social media, a lot of people feel a bit helpless.
Yeah, and I think the mood from Edinburgh supporters is very much, this isn't good enough. We want to see change, and radical change of some description, whether that's let's replace Sean Everett, but I think there was an opportunity for Edinburgh yesterday after the game to say, look, we apologise, this isn't good enough, it won't happen again. And I think they passed that up. But I do think that there'll be some difficult conversations this week. There'll be some, I think you're right that you analyse more when you lose. I don't necessarily know that you learn more. I think, as you say, you pick through every minutiae of your game and where it all went wrong. And look, other teams will go to South Africa and not come back with much. It's the manner that collapse in the first half was just, they were just all over the place. And look, the Lions have got some good players that have been unlucky with Springbok selection and maybe deserve more. But it was just so easy. And the worry for me is at the weekend that the Stormers could come with a team laden full of Springboks who sense that Edinburgh are weakened. And you look at this from a bigger point of view. I know we'll talk about Glasgow in a wee while, but Franco Smith said after the game on Friday night that their trip to South Africa coming up and Edinburgh's current trip actually could work out well for the national team, because Scotland will get confidence playing against South African play. Well, that's just totally eroded from the Edinburgh players' point of view. They'll hear South Africa and just think, nah, no thanks. It would be hard not to be in that position after the damage of the last 24 hours.
Yeah, sometimes a break's as good as a change, though, isn't it? There's a lot of people, and we spoke about this before we hit play. The emotion is miles high. People are calling for radical change. There's been radical change. There's been radical change quite a lot over the recent history of the club. Cockers went, Mike Blair, Steve Diamond, Sean Everett. There's been some radical change. There's been a lot of players that have been at Edinburgh for a long time. There's players that have come back. to Edinburgh. You know, Matt Scott, Magnus Bradbury have come back. I would love to have been in the changing room. This is, maybe I'm a bit sick in the head, but I would love to have been in that changing room at halftime. I would love to have been Sean Everett. I would love to have been Grant Gilchrist or Ben Velicott. I would love to have had that opportunity. I can't imagine what it looked like though, because I've never been in a professional rugby changing room, so I don't know how it goes. But you know, we heard when Scotland played England at Twickenham in the crazy game that ended in a draw that changing room at half time was where it changed. They came out, they scored 3 unanswered tries. I would love to know what happened in the changing room. And then after the game, do you continue what happened at half time? Do you say, right, park it, let's move on? Do you pick up, like, they're going to have to do a review. They're flying today. They've got to get back on a horse for 5:15 on Saturday night. I'm really intrigued as to what's actually happening. Like you're saying, difficult conversations. Every conversation this week's going to be difficult. You know, Doug Struth's going to be having difficult conversations. The media team's having difficult conversations. There's not an easy conversation this week, and they're going to be champing at the bit to get to kick-off, I hope, next week. Yeah,
that has to be the if you look for, we're forward thinking now, you know, but if you part that game to a degree, that has to be the thing now. Edinburgh must react, and actually the reaction has to fuel the rest of the season. And they say, okay, 3 games in, but actually after the first game,
I kind of get what you mean. And sorry for butting in, but yesterday's never going to go away. You know, it's never going to go away, and it's going to come up every time something happens. Now people are going to remind Sean, oh, but this happened then. Oh, and it could be a positive. It could be that was the line in the sand that you spoke about, and they've kicked on. They get a win against the Stormers next Saturday, and all of a sudden this doesn't quite become chip paper, but beat Stormers, eyes are focused on getting forward. I think that Scotland break might be something that's quite useful, where you sort of block that little bit off between now and the tests. But then your squad splits again. You got folk away on international duty and folks still training, and yeah, it's a big old challenge. I mean, Sean probably couldn't ask for a bigger challenge than he's got just now.
No, I think that's fair. And I think that, you know, again, John Barclay referenced this on TV, that after the first game, everything felt okay. I think they played reasonably well, apart from there was maybe a 10-minute spell where Leinster kind of took over. But, you know, I remember speaking to you after the game and saying, well, that wasn't what I expected. I thought Edinburgh were better than I thought they would be against a very, very good Leinster team. Last week was probably frustrating that Edinburgh didn't win at Loftus. You know, that's the measure of you played well against Leinster. You should have beat the Bulls at home. And then this was just, I think that's perennially been the problem with Edinburgh, is that, you know, they've had good results in one-off games or strung a few results together, but they haven't managed the level of consistency that, for example, Glasgow have found, that's led to them actually challenging for any kind of silverware, or they've got to a big game and let an opportunity slip through their hands. And I think there now has to, you know, we talked enough about Sean. I think, you know, people, I worry for Sean that fans, once fans have decided your time is up, it's hard to then get them back on completely on side. Look, that's not the be-all and end-all of being a coach, but I think it is important. I think the other thing that I've noticed in social media in the last 24 hours is the criticism of the players is growing and growing. And actually, there are a lot of players who've been in that setup for a long time who keep saying they've got points to prove, but continue to underperform. You know, if you look at Edinburgh's squad, they should be they should be a top 8 team, and then that should be quite a comfortable achievement. You know, Edinburgh, I think, have got one of the best squads. If you look at even the back row.
Yeah, and I get that, right, but I feel like we've got a bit of local bias because we know the Edinburgh squads and the players, and we know the Glasgow squads and the players. But there's you look at the results from yesterday. Zebra get a win last week, and then they take a bit of pasting yesterday. Ospreys don't score a point yesterday. Like there's good players in those squads, and we don't necessarily know who they are purely because they're not under our nose. The league is really tough. You're looking at the results of the first 3 weekends, and to try and pick a top 8, you could probably pick a top 4. And then after that, I think it becomes who can stick a run of games together, who can make home a fortress and pick up what they can away, almost French style. It's really, really tough. And the Edinburgh players, I'm not questioning anybody's effort. I don't think we can question effort. I don't think you can really play professional rugby and not give effort, because if you do, you'll get hurt. You'll not last very long. But there's something just not quite clicked yet. And sometimes that can happen over a run of games. Sometimes it can just happen in a game. But whatever happened yesterday in the first half was really difficult to take, really difficult to watch. And as I said at the very beginning, nobody's hurting more than they are. I just hope that they feel like they've got the way forward for this week. There has to be a plan for this week. And hopefully when you speak to Sean after the game, he'll be able to say, yeah, we had a plan, everybody stuck to it, and look what happened.
Yeah, and that's it. And that ultimately is what we all want, is to see a response now. But that response has to come over the next 2, 3, 4 games. It can't be this and this. I suppose this was my point earlier, that Edinburgh can put a big result together. They can produce, particularly at the Hive. They've got to back this up. Next time they go away from home, they've got to look, and I think they've got to look harder to beat. And that was one of the things that, in the early days, Richard Cockrell and Steve Diamond have changed about them. They made them a much tougher team to beat. And I worry that we're starting to see that sort of undo itself. But look, it's a big week. It's a massive week for everybody, and they've got to sort it out, because yesterday was just miles off it. And I think, a crumb of comfort would have been to come home with a losing bonus point in that after the second half, and with 30 seconds to go, Ross McCann made a half break and then tried the Harlem Globetrotters offload. And I remember in the house just throwing my hands up in the air and thinking, that has just summed up the whole afternoon. And it's not.
That's the trying harder bit, though, isn't it? That's it. That's the forcing it. I want to make it happen. I'm trying to make it happen. I'm going to be the spark. In Maggie's head, subconsciously, he's like, I'm going to make a massive carry here. Boan Venter comes on. He's like, right, I need to dominate this. You look at the next fixtures until the international break. Stormers at home, Cardiff at home. So 2 games on the bounce at home. Hopefully decent. Away to Ospreys, who are, we could have a crack there. And then Benetton at home. So those 4 games, all of a sudden we could be sitting 6th in the table. And I know we've been there before, because we spoke about this before the season, about the first 3 games. But with my optimist hat on and trying to be that head coach, thinking, right, how do we block this? How do we focus this? The coaches will be sitting in the airport lounge, probably with laptops open, scanning whatever, talking over coffee. How do we bring this back? The players will be having leadership meeting and then speaking to the group, sitting on that flight I hope they've got some good movies, because I think they need to switch off for a bit before they come back to work. I don't know if they get a rest day tomorrow or if they have meetings or how it's going to work. It's a quick turnaround though, and that's like, how do you change that in what is really 5 days?
Yeah, and that's the challenge, is that, you know, how do you balance the week? Do you front load the week and actually use the heart of Saturday to fuel your week going forward, or do you give the players some time off and say, look, come back in?
And see that, sorry to jump in, but there you go. Like the instant sort of reaction is, do we just work hard? Like, do we just need to feel like we've? But I'm not sure that's what it is. I'm not sure.
And then you get to the end of the week.
Sean does front load the week. I mean, they work really hard. I think Mondays, Tuesdays. That's a big old load, kind of South African style, and then it really tapers. But a lot of the time is maybe spent watching videos, sitting with each other, going through. I don't know how early they pick and name a team and train as a team, but like I don't think I'm clutching at straws, because I don't have the answer. I've never been a pro coach. I've never spent that much time with anybody. The only time I've ever had really a Tuesday and a Thursday, right? How do we fix what happened? You know, realistically, what can we make better? And sometimes time's actually tougher, isn't it? They've not got a day job to go to or other things to go to. They're right in the middle of it.
You make a good point about the flight. Like, it's hard to know. As you've said a couple of times now, nobody will be hurting more than the players and the staff. And it's a long flight home. It's hard to know how you can kind of shut off. You know, I'm sure you've had bad results as a player and a coach, and I certainly have. And, you know, it sort of stews at you until you can put your boots back on, whether that's the following Saturday or Tuesday night, but, you know, the sooner the better in that respect. So, you know, are the likes
I think
of
because Emirates are the sponsor as well, they've got to go via Dubai, so they've probably got a layover there. It's like, I keep looking at this guy, and we've just been through that thing together, and I know it's supposed to make us feel stronger, but I just want to go home and see my wife or my kid or my girlfriend, or sleep or watch. I need to get out of this thing.
Just before we move on, we had a comment. Deluded Edinburgh, the best squads. I think, to be fair, what I meant was Edinburgh have one of the best teams with too many gaps. I agree with that. I think Glasgow have developed a proper squad. I think Edinburgh have a good team on paper. I think when you start getting into beneath that, I think there are more gaps in the Edinburgh squad than there are in Glasgow's, or less experience. I think Franco's been good at managing the whole squad. More real leadership at Glasgow, and no obvious culture or style of play at Edinburgh. I think the culture and the style of play, I think, are things that are a concern, because I haven't really got what Edinburgh tried to do in attack, particularly at the start of the season. They looked like, if we go more technical, they were so deep yesterday when they had the ball that everything they did was miles behind the gain line. So every time they carried, even when it was like 0-0 in the first couple of minutes, they were carrying. Every carry was a negative carry. They were behind the gain line all the time. And then Ben Healy was so deep that it was almost impossible for, like, Sione on Friday night caused chaos on the gain line because he was getting it at full tilt but close to the defenders. Whereas, and Edinburgh, they just run out of ideas. Like, after about 3 or 4 phases at times, it looked like they just had run out of ideas. And that was the worry for me. Like, Darcy got handed one sort of, it wasn't even a pass. It was almost handed, you know, when you mini rugby and somebody hands you the ball, he was almost handed the ball on the halfway line, standing still. And, you know, you could sense and what do you expect me to do with this? Inevitably, he took it into contact, he was turned over, and I think the Lions went up the other end and scored, or either scored or nearly scored. It was just like...
I feel for Sean Everett. He's a good human, and last year we're going to work on our kicking game and our defence. This year we're going to look at our attack, and then you have 40 minutes like that, and you've laid a glove, and you've conceded 7 tries. He must be sitting in the box thinking, how do I change this right now, like this second? How do I get on there? Because there's Brentford again. Brentford scored their three games in a row. They scored in under a minute, their first goal, and then yesterday it took them, I think, 2.5 minutes to score. What is going on at Brent? What's going on at Brentford? How do you prepare for that? But I was talking about this in the car with my wife, and my wife went, "But why are the other teams not aware? Why are they not stopping that?"
Yeah,
and that's a great question, because that's exactly it. I know that you're going to box kick this. So we're in position to box kick it. So what are we planning to prepare for that? Like you said, 4 phases, right? We're going to get to 4 phases. Some rugby just bores me to tears, because it goes. I watched a wee bit of Premiership, and it was about 40 phases. Where is it? And how referees didn't blow the whistle for sealing off and coming off their feet. Right. Anyway, that's a whole other pod. But it's so tough, because these guys are put up in front of you lot in the press and asked for sound bites and what do you think and what are you working on? And inevitably at some point it's going to come back and bite you in the ass. It's getting to that stage of football managers. You're in the job until we've decided you're not good enough. You can, and being a Hibs fan, it's broken my heart because we lost Frank Sozzi and John Collins, who were heroes of mine. If it happens to David Gray, I'll be absolutely heartbroken. So it's none of us want these folk to fail, even. And I still, even though there's been a couple of horrific comments, and one I was telling you about on Twitter that I saw, or X that I saw, that I'm still trying to work out if I'm going to bite back. But anyway, I think everybody wants you to succeed. I would love coaches to walk away on their terms, because I like hugging trees. But I need personally, right? It's now all about me. I need to get to the Hive on Saturday, because I need this to get better. I can't cope with another Gav Harper Sunday morning coffee break, because this is not good for my vibe.
Do you know what? It's not good. It's not good for anybody. And look, nobody wants to be having an emergency 10 o'clock Sunday morning podcast. So from that reason alone, let's hope that Edinburgh can turn things around on Saturday night.
And the players will likely have to talk a lot this week, and then I don't know. I don't know if it's right, lads, we'll see on Wednesday, or right, you're in at 6:30, or I don't know what the answer is, and you don't know until you've got hindsight. Nobody knows. And we spoke about the pre-season, everybody's happy. We spoke to Bernie about this with Scotland Women. Everybody's happy because I've not had to select a team. Nobody's been dropped. Nobody's in. Everything's fine. And then Mike Tyson, you've got a plan until somebody smacks you in the face. Well, we've been smacked in the face, right? What's the next plan? Is it, the days of getting beasted are gone. I remember when I played rugby in New Zealand, and we took a bit of hiding on the Saturday, and the coach went, right, Tuesday night, this is him shouting at the forwards, Tuesday night is the night of the 100 scrums. And as I stand off having the corner, hosing myself, laughing, again, good luck with that, boys, because we'll probably be passing and kicking. But you boys go and enjoy your 100 scrums to make this better. Those days are gone. That's not how it works. But I don't know what it is, and we wouldn't know until Saturday. But I really hope Sean gets to front up to the press on Saturday and go, yeah, we've learned some lessons, but today was better. We got the result, and we're moving forward. But Stormers, I think they're on their way for Italy, aren't they? And they'll be reasonably happy.
Your point earlier is an interesting one, because I think probably I would quite like to stand in front of Sean on Saturday night and say, a week ago you guys were questioning my job. Now we've just beat the Stormers. But the problem for him is this was so bad that it's going to come up after almost every, it's going to be, well, if Edinburgh lose again, people will immediately say you're can produce one-off results, but no consistency. So it's almost an easy thing to sort of attack Edinburgh as a whole, the players, the coaches. But yeah, there's another comment just come in. They need to own it. Disaster, yes, but as you say, this has got to be the bottom line. I think that's it. Like, they now just need to say...
His boy was playing in the A-team against Saris the other night. Isaac got off the bench at Saris.
Sean said, there's another... We've got plenty of comments come flooding in now. We can't lose again. It must be a win. I think if that's in reference to the Stormers game, Gillian, I think 100%. If Edinburgh lose again, I think...
Go and put that back up again. I want to know which one in that picture Gillian is. Gillian, which one are you?
I can tell you that Gillian is not, because I think Gillian's son is one of my ex-teammates at Haddington. Sometimes teammates at Haddington when I can get out and play and I'm not sitting in the house either on podcast to you or watching events like I watched yesterday.
We've got to get to the hive. For myself, right? Again, it's all about me. I need to get to 5:15, and we need to kick off. Stormers are getting up the ball on for the kickoff. We're going to kick to the corner, catch and drive, and Paddy Harrison's going to score. How good was he when he came on? He looked hungry, and he got proper feisty. There was a couple of... I was like, go boy.
And actually, like, I wanted, like, we're going back to the levels that you and I have played at. Yours considerably better than mine, but I always want to see a bit of a reaction. And I think the two things that I thought were strange from Edinburgh, they were forced into that change that he came on. And we're about to talk about Glasgow, I'm sure, but like Sean Everett never made a change at half time. Contrast that with Cardiff. Now, I don't know the Cardiff injury situation, but at half time on Friday night, Cardiff took off both props, or a prop and a hooker, their captain, who was Liam Belcher at their hooker, and both halfbacks, and said, well, we're going to have to go for this. This is a complete change of plan.
Yeah.
Now, I get the flip side of that is Sean's clearly said, I'll give you some time to put it right.
Yeah.
And the first 10 minutes of the second half, you kind of saw a bit of a reaction. Edinburgh scored the 2 tries. Again, they've scored twice in 10 minutes and then concede when Lions were down to 14 men. You just think it's all just kind of... this isn't going to happen. The 4 tries it would have been scant consolation, and it's not going to help. And another couple of comments from Karen, who says Paddy was brilliant, which I think is
all right, Karen.
Brilliant in the circumstances, which I think were very difficult.
I thought Paddy was class.
And number 10 should have been, I think, probably
should have been charged. You should have been charged earlier. That's a bit harsh. I hope that's a typo. Gee whiz.
I think
legal proceedings against them now.
But I think when you're looking at changing, if you were making big changes, 9 and 10's the obvious one. Edinburgh obviously were victims of Duhan not playing. I gather that's not reasonably, it's not a serious thing. So we might see him at the Hive on Saturday night. But they were then victims of having a 6-2 bench, which meant Sean probably didn't want to use both back subs at the same time, which meant Ali Price only got 10 minutes. Like, those things are just difficult to manage. But you look at that again and say, well, Edinburgh flew Harry Morris out on Monday or Tuesday, probably knowing he wasn't going to play, knowing that Bennett's injury looked reasonably serious. Matt Curry was probably always struggling. Just, why not take another back? If you're sending one player out, why not send a second to give you that cover that if you need another back on the bench, you've got numbers and stuff there.
I thought Ben Muncaster again went well. I thought he came in and threw himself around.
Yeah, and again, that's kind of what you want, isn't it, in that situation off the bench, is you just want folk to come in and make a point, cause a bit of chaos, and Paddy and Ben did that to a degree. Both took their tries reasonably well. Paddy was doing a bit of backslapping once he had scored, which I enjoyed because I thought, well, that's a bit of what Edinburgh need in this situation, and it's coming for a guy who played 38 minutes for the first team last season, but has clearly taken something from being away with Scotland. But the fact that he was the shouter was again. You think, well, there's others there that should be doing that.
He's not a wee boy anymore. I think the summer Paddy's become a man, and he's become a proper. He's not a prospect anymore. Paddy's a player,
and let's hope he gets more opportunities this season. I would say.
Well, he seemed like he was up for it and seemed gutsy on Saturday, and I've got a lot of time for him. He's a great kid. He's not a kid anymore, but you get what I mean. Yeah, listen, I'll see you on Saturday.
You might have some job to G the crowd up beforehand.
Hey, no bother. I'm telling you, it's going to be. I hope it's full. It would be a big old statement from a pretty loyal fan base to go, right, come on in, we're behind you, go for it. We're going to do everything we can do. I was speaking to a couple of folk yesterday. I spoke to Matt Day, actually, former Edinburgh player, and he was saying how much he enjoys the Hive and how he would have loved to have played there, and he was sort of likening things to back in his day, and found playing in the big bowl difficult in the atmosphere, and now he takes his kids to the Hive, and he said it's just different gravy. So if we can try and generate some of that, the first 10 minutes is crucial. I mean, if we can do some good stuff and get the music pumping the first 10 minutes, then maybe the crowd are on it, the boys lift, and because they're going to need that. I mean, they're going to be walking up that walkway, and I hope their shoulders are back and chests out, and they're like, right, come on in, we're good to go. I really hope so. It's going to be in team selection. It's going to be interesting as well. What have they learned? Who gets another goal?
Sean said yesterday, they learn. He did say they'll learn more than when they've lost a game. So, but he very much was of the opinion that there'll not be no reinventing of the wheel in terms of the selection, and there might be a bit of freshening up. Luke Crosby was back for the A team on Friday night. He's somebody who brings a bit of steely sort of grit and determination, pretty physical, which will be needed against Stormers. Has captained Edinburgh, has captained Scotland, so I wouldn't be surprised to see him come in. I think there are questions over the halfbacks, which we have debated long on here many times over kind of pre-season. Is it combinations? Is it two individuals? How do you find the best balance? The centres, I think there are a lot of things for Sean and his coaching staff to consider over the next probably 48 hours before they start thinking about picking a team.
Yeah, I'm still of the opinion Ali Price has got a heap of experience, but I'm still of the opinion that the Hive, Ben Velikop's the one that can light the touch paper. I still think he's one that can spark something to lift the atmosphere and lift his teammates, because Darcy can produce something out of nothing. It's just difficult for him to be given a chance rather than an optimistic have a go, Darcy. Yeah, listen, right, Friday night, I watched a fair bit of the Glasgow game. I messaged you and gave up the Aitchison kiss of death. I messaged you, Jamie Dobie, Scotland #9. Then he goes to the back of the ruck, goes to box kick it, gets pushed. It was like touch, and he conceded to try. And I was like, oh, sorry,
I'm still, I tweeted this or whatever, posted on X about this on Friday night. I'm still not convinced that's allowed. You can't shove somebody. Like,
you can't if they've got the ball.
But he didn't have the ball.
He did, because he went to kick it and he fresh aired it.
It was quite a spectacular fresh air shot.
Like there's a few things that happen in your life. It's like when you trip on the curb and you like when you bite your tongue when you're eating something, like how can I sometimes bite my tongue? It's like those human moments of you didn't see animals making the mistakes, and fresh air and a kick is one of those moments. I tell you, I've never been so proud of my daughter in my life. We were on the street and somebody tripped, and my daughter claimed a penalty. I was like, "That's my girl. That's my girl." I was so proud of her because we call penalties all the time. As soon as you tumble, you've got to shout for it. You got to claim for a penalty. And some stranger tripped, and she went penalty. I said, "Yes." She's been well brought up.
Clearly, the Aitchison family have a lot more entertaining walks than I do. Yeah, that's a new one on me. Listen, just before we move on, Robin's come back. The flight movie needs to be the Glasgow game. Players making quick decisions and playing together. So I think while we digress from Edinburgh into Glasgow, I think that is actually
I tell you what, Robin, there's a way to kick folk when they're doing it. I think that would be it. It's like bullseye. Look what you could have won. Magic. That's exactly what the Edinburgh players want. Let's watch Glasgow high-fiving. Sione was outrageous on Friday, I thought.
Just like...
He just seems like he's getting better and happier and more confident.
And you know, like we spoke to him after the game they won at home, which has completely escaped me, Benetton, and like he's not afraid to say, "Nah, this is like I want to be like, for example, I want to be a British Lion, and I want to go back to Australia where it all started, and I didn't really get many opportunities." And I want to put that red jersey on and I want to prove a point. And it's like, I wish more of the Scottish-born players had that innate confidence to say...
I know, but I'm back to, like, Sean has to give sound bites and it's then just used to bite you in the ass. Like, if there's this culture here that it just keeps coming. You're right. I would love that. I would love there to be a bit more strut, but yeah.
But he didn't have, talking about Sione, he didn't have strut on Friday night. He was unbelievable. And
Tom Jordan back carving it up.
Look, I thought he was unreal again.
And I think Ryan Wilson said he qualifies for Scotland the week after the Fiji game. And even Franco I think, made a comment you were writing about saying, you know, why not?
Yeah, I mean, why not? I think I know you hate talking about international windows, but that is such a frustration because had he qualified for the Fiji game without Finn and without all the exiles, it would have been a great opportunity to give him a go. Given that it's outside the window, him and Adam Hastings could have split the 10 duties. And it's probably not the worst introduction. I actually think that would have kind of quite suited Tom Jordan's game. But there's obviously a game against Portugal a couple of weeks later that it's hard to see him not being involved in that. And then I think if he's not, for whatever reason, the night before the Australia game, we'll be back at the Hive to watch Scotland A play Chile. So I think there's every chance he's involved in. I think he'll definitely be involved in some capacity in the autumn. But
I don't think he can be left out. He's made himself, unless something drastically goes wrong or Gregor's got something else planned that I'm not sure what it would be. I don't think he can be left out.
And he's different. Franco said this to us, during the week. He's different from a kick. He doesn't kick as much as a sort of traditional Scottish 10. That worries me in the respect that I think Gregor might consider him possibly at 12 more. Then
we're back to this bench thing of it gives a bit of flexibility. If you had Jamie Dobie and Tom Jordan on the bench, you're pretty much covered.
Yeah, and then you're looking at other players. Sione has proved he can play 13. Hugh could play fullback. So you've got flexibility enough within the team. And again, one of the biggest talking points has been the wingers. If you're looking at a 50-50, do you go Kyle Steyn ahead of one of the Edinburgh boys because Kyle could cover 30? He gives you flexibility in that he can move to 13.
Well,
he could probably
talking about wingers. Kyle Rowe and Kyle Steyn, Duhan and Darcy, like where Darcy and Duhan have not really been able to show what they're capable of.
And
Kyle and Kyle are getting a run. How do you pick a Scotland team?
Yeah, we've totally discounted their Aaron Reid, who I know you said you watched a bit of Premiership stuff. Have you seen his covering tackle for Sale on Friday night?
He's gutsy, like
it is
someone else.
Like sensational. Like the effort to get back and the pace to get back.
Yeah, that's
one
it.
thing.
The guts is,
but like the determination to get up and make that second tackle is like, it's just unbelievable. That's incredible work rate.
Yeah.
So who knows?
And it's like me talking about scrum half, and I never mentioned Ben White. You know, I'm back to that local bias I was talking about before. Yeah,
again,
the Glasgow.
I wrote a piece last week about problems and never mentioned Gus Warr as a potential at 9. You know, and then he scored a try at the weekend and played pretty well. So yeah, but back to Glasgow, I think.
Well, up front for Glasgow, like Johnny Matthews, all over it. He comes off. Things didn't get any. You know, they seem to lift again. Props, things seem to lift again. Richie Gray's been allowed to, you know, away you go, Richie, because we're okay, we're covered. That's a pretty sizable statement. I don't. You know, there's a lot goes on that you'll never hear or be allowed to write about, and we might hear whispers, but. For him, we were talking about the Grey boys last week, and now it's deemed there's enough there that you don't need Richie Gray. Like that's a pretty big statement, I think.
And I think the thing that we might probably at this point should talk about is that Gregor was quite clear that it would be difficult to pick George Turner when he moved to Japan, assuming that is where Richie's going. And I'm putting 2 and 2 together here with the timing of the announcement and the timing of him leaving seems to fit well with him going straight into the Japanese season, which starts in December. But if that is where he's going, it becomes difficult to see, and he's 35. So has there been a conversation with Gregor where he's been told, look, we're probably going to look at other options? I don't know, but it certainly seems to be the end.
I wonder if he's got to see wee Grieg. I wonder if Grieg's got him.
I mean, there are so many coaches in Japan who probably have Richie Gray, have experienced working with Richie at some point. That it wouldn't surprise. It wouldn't be a huge surprise if Greg's been on the phone, but I'm sure that will all come to pass in the next few weeks. And I hope Glasgow give him a good send-off.
He's leaving Glasgow in a pretty decent spot. I saw Matt Fagerson sort of tweeted or retweeted his love for him. It's a popular guy leaving what seems to be a pretty happy camp.
Yeah, and we spoke to Scott Cummings after the game, who was saying, look, he said Big Al, which had me completely confused because I thought Al Kellick was coming out of retirement, but he met Alex Samuel, thankfully for I think us all, including Al Kellick. But Big Al and Max Williamson are more than ready to fill that gap, and I think they've probably proved that over the last 12 months. Max Williamson, particularly last season, for me, was probably Glasgow's Player of the Year. And that's no mean feat considering the players they've got and what they went to achieve. So, it opens the door for him. They've obviously got JP Dupree on their kind of long-term injured. And last we heard, it didn't sound like he was that close to a return. So we'll wait and see what happens there. And if they look at bringing in any kind of an extra body, basically, to fill the gap. But, there's enough with like Rory Hart, who played for the 20s, can come in. So, it'll be interesting to see. But as I say,
Dempsey back charging a bit as well.
Oh, he's another one that, like, we don't speak to Jack Dempsey that often, and the last time we did was after the URC win, and he looked slightly dusty with some very, very dark shades on. But I wanted, I would like to speak to him now and be able to say, okay, you won 14 caps for Australia. Are you going to go back there and play against them with the British Lions next summer? Because he's right in that. Him and Matt Fagerson, and to be fair, Rory Darge as well, have to be in that conversation because they're just consistently.
I think you're back to some local bias there, my man.
I think
Andy Farrell, head coach, that Irish back row, England are. 100%. I mean, Underhill was on the bench for Bath yesterday,
and that's the one thing that will count against. The one thing that will count against Darge, particularly, is the fact he's an out-and-out 7, where the other two can do it. Matt Fagerson played 7 at the weekend and proved that he could do a job across the back row. Dempsey's probably more of an 8 than the others, but is he more of an 8 than anybody else in the other countries, bar Caelan Doris? He would be my backup 8. I think he's that good.
It's the Lions thing. I like you said. Sione's going. Listen, I want to do that. His motivation maybe doesn't sit particularly well with me, but that's just I need to get over myself with that. But the thought of Scotland in the autumn tests, you've got to play Australia, is hopefully I'd love to think it's a positive. They've got to play South Africa. I think if boys genuinely want to be a Lion, they have to be able to perform, and that means the team has to perform. And then the Six Nations is beginning to scare me. Emerging Ireland get to go and play a game during the URC. I mean, that's frightening. That England now look like, although the backroom staff seems like a bit of soap opera, and I can't pretend to know what's going on there. But England are getting better. France are not going anywhere. Italy are getting better. Wales can't possibly be as bad as they were. I don't know. Maybe they can. But from last year saying, by the way, we're going to win a Grand Slam, to this year, and not narrowly missing out, this year I'm going, whoa, this is going to be really, really tough.
I get the feeling every time we talk about the Six Nations, I get the feeling you're very concerned that we're hanging a big spoon up in Murrayfield again. Is it that? Do you feel that concerned about it, or what do you think?
I do, because there's so many things out with control now. Somebody could get carded and you lose 14 points in 10 minutes, or somebody. But Italy must be confident after what they did at home, and they've got to now start getting results away from home. When they look at their fixture list, they must be going, let's have a crack at Murrayfield. England.
I don't want to interrupt, but I'm going to interrupt. Gillian's back to say, me too. She's equally concerned that we are going to be.
I don't listen. I'm the eternal optimist, right? I was all over the Grand Slam last year, and I just get carried away. But I've been a Hibs fan all my life and a Scotland rugby fan all my life. You've got to be optimistic, but it's the hope that kills you. England are hating what's going on just now. I don't care what they say in public or on social media or to you guys in the press, but they hate that Scotland have owned them over the last however many years. That's going to hurt. And Steve Borthwick, he's a scary man. Like he doesn't want that to carry on. France, the thing about France is they're still living up to that stereotype of being a bit of a roller coaster. So maybe they go, well, the World Cup's finished and we've done the Olympics, and maybe we can just relax for a wee while before we have to take it serious again.
Yeah, but we've got to go away. From Galtier's France, I think that they've been much more on it. I think more consistently on it. I think you're right.
Of course they are, and that then scares me more. So well played. Thanks for that. You've just wound me up again by saying, but France are not going to be French. So cheers for that.
No problem. We've digressed into the Six Nations and we've sort of jumped.
You started that. That was your fault.
Yeah, I accept that.
Anyway.
We should probably talk about another good win for Scotland at WXV, but probably not performance.
I love Burnley's honesty. Yeah, Burnley's honesty though. How good. Delighted with the result, and that's what we're here for. We came to win, but performance wasn't up to our standards, and I think Rachel said the same.
Yeah, and to own that and say yeah, we got what we came for. We got the win. We've set up the decider against Australia, but it wasn't good enough. Is recognition, I think, of where they've gone as a team, because I think without playing really well in the past, they would have lost a game.
Well, I was with Megan Gaffney last night. She said she got her first cap in 2011, and I don't think she won her first game until 2017.
I mean, and that's it. Like
and now we're not happy that we've won.
How do you build experience of winning or improving when you turn up knowing that every single time you play, you're going to get beat, and almost, definitely 2 games, England and France, you're going to be well beat. You're probably hardly going to touch the ball, in Megan's case, on the wing. So, like, it's so tough. But then you look at, like, the girls coming into the team now are experiencing winning, experiencing, like, scoring their first try. Alex Stewart yesterday, I think, was her first try. And you think, well, all these things are happening much, much quicker because the team has improved so much over actually a reasonably short period of time.
That was a great score. There was so much in that try. Fran making the assist, I thought that was class. When you need a player to step up, so it's, what was it, 1913 Japan line out, they catch and drive, and Evie Gallagher comes out with the ball. Like, when you need a player, and she's come off the bench, and she wants to play, Jade starts, and Evie comes on and just rips the ball out, and away she goes. What an amazing moment. And that was getting twitchy, because if they score and kick the goal, all of a sudden the conversations are completely different.
But then we spoke to Brian, and a few weeks ago, he was we referenced it earlier. He said that pre-season's great because, again, you don't have to drop anybody who's never picked a team. But actually now he's doing that. He seems to be managing that squad really well, and that he's getting the best out of, like, Evie coming out. She wouldn't have been delighted to have been sitting on the bench for 50, 60 minutes, but she came on and she makes a big difference.
I still think Brebner Holden's got to start. I still think she's got to start.
Yeah, I think the chances of seeing that against Australia next week are slim, knowing Brian, and I think he will revert. But again, you look at the midfield. Merrill played 13. Emma Orr sits on the bench. We know that'll change, but does Merrill move back to 12?
Player of the match.
Yeah, so does Merrill move back to 12?
Got a brilliant turnover. Tomo got a brilliant turnover, and our kicking game is important, although Merrill can kick as well. Yeah, selection is going to be interesting. Rona, the tactic was obviously to kick, because Rona Lloyd kicked 2 more times yesterday than I think she's ever kicked in her life. I couldn't believe it. The first one, she had quite a lot of time, and she dropped it on her boot, and I was like, oh my God, what have they done with Rona? Like, what? Where's that come from? Like, when Rona was at school, she played in goals at football. Like, that cracked me up. But Japan were, I think the feeling was maybe they would fall off, and they didn't. They kept their intensity for the full game. And again, I spoke to Megan last night. She hadn't seen the game. She just saw the result, and she was really surprised. But I think, back to that local bias, we all just thought it was going to happen against Japan. You were talking about making changes to selection because they should run over the top of them, and actually that wasn't what happened.
No, and I think that's where, you could get caught out. Brian could have got caught out in making 7 or 8 changes, but he kind of stuck to that core of the first choice, and they did the job. They got over the line. They've set up a decider. Australia will be tough. They'll have to play, to say they'll have to play better than yesterday is obvious, but they'll have to play probably as well as they have in the last 12, 18 months to win that. But look, they've, after winning a trophy last year, they've given themselves a shot at retaining it. And folk always say to retain a title is harder than to win it the first time. So if they get their hands on the trophy next weekend, then it'll be a great achievement.
Japan have got a female head coach. So have Australia, which is great. But I didn't realise Simon Middleton was involved at Japan. Like, there's I don't know if that's a World Rugby appointment to help or how that works. But, you know, John Mitchell's the head coach of England. The game, and this, I hope this doesn't sound, but the game's being taken so seriously now. You know, the women's game in the venues it's being played in. Sia Khaleesi's there posing for pictures with everybody wearing a Springbok women's shirt, you know, and I know that's window dressing and marketing and all that kind of stuff, but seeing that support, you know, this, you got to see it to be it. And I spoke to Tamara Taylor, England international, and she said, "Nah, that wasn't for her. She didn't need, that wasn't a reason for her." But now it's getting so much easier. The visibility and the social media of WXV has been really, really good. And having Ilona Mayer on Dancing with the Stars in America, amazing. Loving that. Yeah. That's like the perfect storm for me, Strictly and rugby. That's the dream.
That's like your dream. That's your dream. I think though, you look at even the Scotland setup, and to be able to say, you know, 5 years ago we'd have attracted 3 international players into the backroom staff. Like it just wouldn't. And to now have 3 international men's players who say, like particularly Fraser most recently, who say, yeah, I want to give this a go, and this is the right environment for me to be in as my first kind of full-time coaching job out of retirement. Like, it has taken such strides. I'm delighted that Claire Cruikshank's in there with Brian. I think that's a big thing, and I think that it's a good thing to have a kind of female voice, but I also think that she knows so many of the players so well.
She's a reason a whole load of them are there.
Exactly. Like, that actually... Not necessarily even for the rugby stuff, because, you know, you would like to think that Brian Tyrone, Banahan and Fraser Brown have got that, even like them just themselves. But from the personal side, you know, she'll know all these players as people, and I think that makes a massive difference as well.
Another Gal Academy former pupil, big chap. I'm just writing a wee list here. Gregor Townsend, John DL, Richie Gray, Claire Cruikshank, Chris Patterson. The impact that Gala Shields Academy is having on the game of World Rugby is immeasurable.
And didn't kid yourself that you've put Bruce Aitchison at the top of that list.
Well, there's the Chang Langs, the Chang Leng brothers refereeing. You know, David running touch the other night for the Watsonians Heriots game. So there's my list, and you're right. There it is. There's my wee list I made. But you were right. I did put myself at the top. Changing the game, my man. Changing the game.
Incredible stuff.
Well, I'm hoping we get a result against Australia, because it would be amazing, and then hopefully they get to come back and parade about and enjoy themselves for a wee bit, and then it's focused on Six Nations time, and it'd be great for Bernie, because I think he's worked his tail off. Be great for Rachel to come home on that high, the whole squad, and good luck picking a team.
Yes, I think that's definitely going to be a difficult. But look, it's if we flip side that to the conversation we were having an hour ago when we started about Edinburgh, you know, Brian's got difficult decisions to make, but they're certainly easier decisions. They're the decisions you want to be making as a coach, whereas Sean Everett's got a much tougher week ahead.
Definitely. Right, big fella, my bacon's burning. Great to chat to you. The emergency, I think it's helped me.
It'll be well burnt.
Well, I'm home alone, so it's all about me. So I'm wondering, I might take a wee walk to the shop and get a bit of black pudding for a double decker.
Why not? Treat yourself Sunday.
No, I didn't need to treat myself. Those 2 puddings. I was at a dinner last night, Stew Mill dinner last night. And I wasn't going to have dessert, and then they served this thing that I've never seen before, so I thought I'll have to try it. And the woman sitting next to me went, "Did you enjoy that?" And I was like, "Nah, not really. I'm not a big fan of this fruit thing, this pear thing." But and she said, "But I ate it." And I've also been told by my wife to stop eating so quickly at these things, because I asked the woman I was sitting next to a question, and I finished my tea, and it was gone, and she went, "That's because you got me talking." I went, "I know." So she still had most of her plate of food in front of her, and I was done. I was ready for my pudding. Happy days. Right, big fella, great to see you. No doubt we'll chat this week, and then I'll see you at the Hive probably at the weekend, and hopefully we're talking about 3 wins. Edinburgh win, Glasgow win, Scotland women win at the weekend would be a nice one.
It certainly would, yeah. Let's ever the optimist, Bruce, but let's wait and see how the week pans out.
That's it. Subscribe now. 12 months for 12 quid. Get involved. You can read all about it from him over there, and I promise I'm going to get round to another one at some point soon. I was Bruce Aitchison from Happiness Egg Shaped, and he was Gavin Harper from Scotland Rugby News. Look after yourself and happy Sunday.